Welcome back to the Educatedcollins channel. Today we'll be discussing Werewolf by Night. How you doing? Obviously we're going to turn the lights on, but thought I'd do this for Werewolf. It's been a little bit late. It's a pretty good card, TLDR, but got some thoughts on it. Let's get started. All right, first thing I do, I guess I want to mention is that I am a writer in CCGHub.gg, definitely something that they want me to talk about. You could definitely join. I'm going to be releasing an article. It's called Winning Without Playing a Single Card, Snapping Through Deck Building. Essentially, it's a deck building guide that I've been planning. I've been like trying to make for YouTube, but I hadn't, but I took the skeletons of some of the stuff I did previously, put it into a guide, wrote an article about it. So that should be coming out soon. You could definitely use code Educatedcollins for something off, you know. Anyways, whatever. That's just something I should mention. But let's get into the actual video. So here we have, well, we don't have it yet, but we should have Werewolf by Night. That's Nico. There we go. Here we go. So Werewolf by Night's a 3 energy, 3 power card. After you play an unrevealed card at another location, you move there and you gain +2 power. So essentially, the idea is you play this card and then you play more unreveals and then it'll get a little bit stronger. And then the idea is like you play this on 3, you play another one on 4, you play another one on 5, you play another one, or maybe if you're lucky, you'll play 2 on 6. Wow. And then this is going to be a 3/11, right? Which is insane, by the way. A 3/11, you know, but that is if you're playing on reveals. And on reveals, as we all know, is so hard to come by. Not half the cards in the game are not on reveal. So this is such a high bar of execution. Isn't that right? All card game players, and we nod ahead a little bit in disbelief. But yeah, I mean, essentially, this card synergizes with a lot of things. So it's a 3-drop, and Silver Surfer's an on reveal, so that's an easy way of really double dipping. And then Bounce is very notorious for having lots of cheap cards that you play a lot. And hey, you know, sometimes the cheap cards have on reveal effects, and that definitely works well here. But really, it synergizes with everything because everything is an on reveal. Half the cards in the game are on reveal, so this card synergizes with so many things. So, you know, definitely weird. Definitely weird. But let's go into my thoughts. Feel like you can already tell this is a card I would recommend getting because it's super flexible, very high ceiling, right? If you play 4 on reveals, that's a 3/11. That's already crazy. 3/9 is already really strong. So if you just play 3, a 3/9 is something you'd be very happy to play. 3/7 is like the particular like high power 3-drop, right? Like that's Mobius, that's going to be Gladiator, things like that. 3/7 is really where you're like, ooh, wow, that's not bad. And this is a 3/11, like easily, right? Like as long as like you're building with this in mind, right? So it's very likely to be good, right? Maybe the only bad scenario is if you last turn draw this, right? Then it's a 3/3. Maybe it's a 3/5 if you're lucky, right? But other than that, in any of the other turns, it's going to be 3/5, 3/7, that kind of thing, and better. So the ceiling of this is extremely high, super flexible. You can play this in a lot of decks, which is fine, right? Initially, when I saw it, I thought maybe you'd only be playing this in Silver Surfer because those are the decks you could really make it work. But hey, that's not true, right? Obviously, it's an on-reveal card that scales. So, like, yeah, you can play this in a lot of decks. It's also a card that's hard to shut down. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say you want to deal with this card, right? Let's say you have priority or whatever, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to Shadow King this, right? Well, okay, you Shadow King, it's a 3/3. Then they play more on reveals and it's 3/7, and you're like, I wasted my Shadow King to to deal with a 3/7, right? Like you didn't do anything, really. Same thing is like, let's say you don't have priority, then it's a guessing game, right? What lane are they gonna play it in? And that's just not something you want to be wasting your Shang-Chi or your Shadow King on something you're not sure of, right? Like that's pretty hard. Also, it's hard to have priority because they have a 3/11 on the board. Like, yeah, it's gonna be hard. So you're pretty much always playing a guessing game, and there's not like easy ways of really dealing with this. Like sometimes they can mess up, right, and they can lock their lanes. But if there's some decks where that's not even a problem. So that's not always like an issue. So there's just a lot of it's just hard to shut down. And it's a card that gets better with time, right? Like kind of like X-23 was a card I said that gets better with time. This card gets better as they release more on reveals, and since half of the cards they release are pretty much on reveal, there's a guarantee that this is just going to get better. So there's a lot of positives. Now the negative. Here we go. The negative, boys and girls and robots, is that it could get nerfed. I'm not even joking. That is my concern about this card. That it could actually just be a pretty easy to see nerf target where if people are making 313s, 315s, like, yeah, they're going to nerf this. And people are doing that. So I, I've, I'm not confident that it's not going to be nerfed. Or, okay, I'm confident it's going to be nerfed. Let's just cut the double negative here. So that kind of that's not great, right? Like that's really basically we've just seen the Mobius execution. I obviously don't think Mobius is going to stay in that state, but still, for now, we can joke around it because that's the reality we live in, and I don't think Werewolf by Night is going to get that treatment, but it could get nerfed in a meaningful way where it doesn't feel as necessary, where you kind of have to build fully around it, and it's not like this core crazy card. So that's the likely problem. So, keep that in mind when I'm telling you to get this card. Hey, it could easily be nerfed, and then it's going to be the level of maybe Elias, the level of like some of the other cards that are nice to have, but not necessarily a card that you need to play with. And I haven't been playing with this card, to be fair. I did get this card recently, but I was playing a deck without it at all. So, and I was doing fine. Obviously, I think this would have made my deck better, but we'll talk about it later in the deck builds. But it was generally fine. So, what can you say? Anyways, and then some of the just synergistic stuff here. I have been accidentally skipping this slide in all my recent videos. All my recent ones, I've been accidentally skipping this. You can tell I'm making this video late at night because I'm very hyperactive, right? Which is normally not the case in these videos, in my opinion, right? Who knows, right? But as this happens as well, like when I'm streaming, it gets late in the night, right? Like I start going a little bit rambly, which is not good because I'm already a pretty rambly person when I talk about these particular things, not in general, but like in this. But anyways, getting back on track. There's too many synergies with this card just because it synergizes with pretty much all on reveals. I did want to mention Cosmo in particular, since Cosmo, if you play a Cosmo and then you play an on reveal on the Cosmo, you'll still trigger the Werewolf by Night, even if it is denied by the Cosmo. So that's something that could be relevant, right? If you're like, oh, I want to play my combo, but I'm playing my on reveals into the Cosmo lane or something. It's still fine. You can still do that. It'll still move. So that's something currently that's pretty good for the card. Means that you can play into lanes or you can end the movement in a lane that can't be Shang-Chi'd or Shadow King'd or anything like that. So that's pretty powerful. And then like right now, Loki is dominating, so Loki's on reveal, super easy combo, and then all the bound stuff. Like you can just have multiple 1-drops and play that over and over and really stack this card to high heaven. So that's balance for sure. But obviously, this card could be adjusted. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about buying it. All right. Now let's kind of. Oh, I was wondering what that was. Let's look at the Chrome. I actually don't know if I have this here. Here we go. All right. So here we have some of the Werewolf by Night. We also have the spotlights. I always talk about the spotlight that I made earlier in the season, and we'll be having the next one pretty particularly soon. I just haven't done it yet. But in this one, I wouldn't necessarily change anything. The only thing I did change was I would actually rate this a little bit higher than C tier, even if you're only missing Werewolf by Night. It's a Series 5 card. It's pretty good right now. You could definitely argue that it's likely to be changed. So if it does get changed, it probably won't be as powerful or as relevant. So you could say it's still C tier with the notion that it's going to be nerfed. I don't know if it is, right? So don't be like, oh, how do you know? I don't. Like it could just have fine stat lines or fine stats in there and then it doesn't get changed, but it does seem like it has the potential to be adjusted in some way. So that would be my only concern. But other than that, like I still think if you are needing Silk, if you are needing Ghost Spider, you feel free to get this. This is a card that seems pretty good and it should get better with time. So it seems like a card that will be in the meta for the future. So I'm definitely down with it. And then the spotlights are whatever you like. But we always do talk about some deck builds. I do have a couple of deck builds to showcase here. The first two are kind of the same. So this is the Bounce Werewolf deck. So the real annoyance with this is it's a Loki deck, right? And that always is annoying. But you get to double dip, right? You get to add another win condition into this Loki deck where Werewolf by Night can very easily scale with all this bounce. So normally you are using like Elsa, but some people have just decided that Elsa isn't necessarily necessary. This isn't necessary to win with this deck. You already have enough win conditions with the Werewolf, so they just took out the Elsa and put more supplemental cards in there. So definitely, even though I dislike the actual strategy of this deck, I love the deck building aspect of this deck. I think that the win conditions are really well featured with some of the other cards that are added in there, right? You have the Collector Loki combo, and you have the Werewolf, right? But what do these cards want? Werewolf wants on reveal. You have on reveal with these small minions. These small minions are giving you extra minions to buff your Collector. Those extra minions are also set up for your Loki, but then you also have these Falcon, and some of decks are also running Beast to bounce those cards back, also buffing your Collector, but then you can play them again to buff your Werewolf again while giving you more tools for the Loki. It's beautiful. I love the deck design. Don't like the Loki archetype too much. I think it's a little too strong. But anyways, next list is the same kind of function where it's, I wonder if I was like not showing you the bottom of the cards, but it's American Chavez. Next one is a little bit the same. You're running Elsa as well. You're also running Beast. So those are like the main differences, but it's essentially the same list. But I thought they were unique enough that I wanted to showcase it, right? You can still run this with Elsa and do that kind of replay, bounce everything, right? It doesn't have that much movement. I think that's why people are leaning away from this one. I would say the non-Elsa one's more popular, but you can still do this. The downside is you don't have Nightcrawler, you don't have Jeff, those type of cards. You just have to rely on your Falcon and Beast. Now that's fine, but it's a little bit harder, of course, to fully balance that, especially with the Werewolf as well. So that's like the only consideration there. But overall, still good list, still same toxicity that you know and love. Next up, we have Silver Surfer. So I think Silver Surfer is the probably second dinner intended deck list. You know what I mean? Like, this is what second dinner was imagining you to play it as when they created the card. But yeah, I mean, it does work well. And you do get to play Negasonic Teenage, which I think is a very strong card right now. Just not seeing that much play because it's a little bit awkward to play, but I think the ceiling is super high for the card. So I don't have it yet, but eventually when I do, right, so I'll be definitely testing it for myself. But for now, definitely Sarah into tons of power for 3 cost cards is still a very effective strategy that you can do, and it hasn't really changed. So Werewolf is just another tool to do that with, and we'll get more of those tools as they keep releasing more powerful 3-cost cards. So feel free. Next up, we have just the bounce. So if you want to take out Loki, you wanna play this deck but be noble. I honestly think bounce is also kind of toxic. So there's no winning with me. But no Loki for sure. You get to play Darkhawk, which I like the card for sure. This is definitely a little bit more Werewolf as the win condition. So instead of the Collector Loki win condition, now you're going Werewolf Darkhawk win conditions, which is perfectly fine. You get to play Bask, which is cool. So lots of powerful stuff in here as well if you want to just play traditional bounce now that there's no Mobius, now that there's no wave. So you can just run rampant. There's no answers to this. I mean, you can Killmonger, right? Killmonger would be like super disgusting, but other than that, right, there's not that many answers. Next up, we have a list I was surprised about because I was running a very similar list to this, like, yesterday or so. I didn't know it was a popular list, essentially. I was just like playing Thor, Jane Foster, Hid Monkey, but apparently you can add Werewolf, which makes a ton of sense and seems like a good idea. I don't particularly know about this exact list. The next and final deck is going to be the list I was running. Now, I also don't know about my list, right? My list is definitely kind of more to troll the Loki players, but it still worked for me, right? So it's something I just want to mention. But this is like definitely a cool idea. I am liking this Thor, Jane Foster, Hid Monkey idea with the 0-cost cards. I think it's just a nice base to. If you like playing tech cards, I think this is one of the better bases to put tech cards in. So, I like playing with tech, so it's something that I resonate with. But I do want to say I've been playing this next list. So this is my own list. However, I was not playing Werewolf by Night. I was actually playing Cable instead of Werewolf by Night. At the time, I didn't have Werewolf by Night. I just didn't buy it, or I have it now, but I didn't have it until like very recently, right? So, I was just playing it with Cable, and I do admit Werewolf by Night is probably way better in this deck. But I was running this deck high ranked. I was doing particularly fine. I definitely think part of it is my opponents have no idea what I'm doing, right? I'm playing Black Widow, they're thinking Darkhawk. Did I play Cable? Then they're like, what the F, right? Like, what am I doing, right? So there's definitely that aspect, but I do think into this particular meta with all the Loki, with all the Werewolf, right? Shadow King, Shang-Chi does a lot of work for you. Black Widow is pretty annoying, just like slowing down people's tempo. I will say Black Widow does buff Collector. Fortunately, I usually will Shadow King it back down, but it is like kind of annoying, But and then just Silk being like a powerful early game drop, and sometimes to deal with some of those locations can't get into. And then Blue Marvel is just, since we're running all these very small things, we also don't have a 6-drop, so you can go Blue Marvel into whatever a lot of the time. So that's my particular list, and I do think Werewolf would be better than a Cable, right? I would also be playing Negasonic if I had that instead of Werewolf, one of the two, but I didn't have any of them at the time, but it was doing well for me. So this is something you can try, kind of the same vibe as the previous list, but this is what I was playing accidentally. I had no idea people were playing something even similar. So that's my thoughts. Overall, I think Werewolf by Night is a very strong card that's very flexible, surprisingly flexible, and will get better with time as they release more on reveals. So it's only a matter of time before there's like, oh, this works really well with Werewolf by Night. Da, da, da. So the only fear, of course, is that it could get nerfed. It's pretty good. Its synergies with bounce is pretty disgusting in my opinion. And some of the counterplay, which is like destroying it or Shadow Kinging it, is hard to do because you tend to have priority, or it just moves around a lot and you're like, do I want to hit this lane, with my Shadow King, and da, 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 da. So that's my thoughts on the card. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Sorry for the late video. I'll see you in the next one. Da, 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 da. Have a good weekend. Sucks to be a NA League fan. You know how it is, the classic. But yeah, peace out.
Educatedcollins snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you tomorrow snap. Your skills will be improved.